Hello, my name is Caleb Smith with the Rocket Miner newspaper, here with an update for April 20th, 2021. On a day when the Green River City Council again proclaimed April to be Child Abuse Awareness Month, and the Rock Springs City Council approved a roughly $5 million contract with the D. Bernardi Construction Company for the first phase of the Bitter Creek Restoration Project, I want to focus on a song that's kind of been playing through my head today with some of the other developments that we've had. Randy Newman's Sail Away album was released in 1972. The title track, which is also the first song, tells the story of a sea captain making a pitch to African natives. He's honestly trying to sell the dream of America, where he promises food, comfort, safety, proclaiming it's great to be an American. The repeated chorus repeatedly encourages them to sail away, promising that they will cross the mighty ocean into Charleston Bay. The song itself is sweet, has a gentle chord progression, some simple piano, like orchestration in the background. And as you go through the layers, you realize that it's not just any old captain, but it's a slave trader trying to find human cargo. Going back to the previously mentioned Charleston Bay, during the transatlantic slave trade, about 40% of enslaved Africans brought into the country passed through Charleston Harbor. By 1860, the start of the American Civil War, there were 4 million slaves in the United States. When I think of the song "Sail Away," which often I'll listen to in some reflective moments, I think of unfulfilled promises, of pledges not kept, of potential still not seen, not fully grasped. The sea captain goes on to say that in America, every man is free to take care of his home and his family. He promises great happiness, and even tells his listeners that you're all going to be an American. It's a great pitch. It's a great song. But the difference between what should be and what is continues to be a source of disappointment, of strife in this nation. And a matter of what's right, what's just, is something that people still claim or strive for. Flashing forward to a more recent scene than what Randy Newman was painting in his song. Both body camera footage and footage taken by bystanders show George Floyd gasping for breath, pleading, "I can't breathe," on May 25th, 2020. And the subsequent trial that prosecutors argued that former police officer Derek Chauvin was responsible for Floyd's death after kneeling on his neck for 9 minutes, 29 seconds. Today, a jury came back with a verdict stating that they agreed with that argument, finding Chauvin guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. It's not the only case that we have to talk about. Well, that's probably the highest profile case that we've had in America. Confrontations with police often end in death, or certainly at a rate that I think the public and the officers themselves wish it wasn't so high. I had an article on Saturday April 17th, noted that since testimony began in Chauvin's trial on since testimony began in Chauvin's trial on March 29th, at least 64 people had died at the hands of law enforcement, with black and Latino people representing more than half of the dead. This article from Saturday said that as of then, the average is more than 3 deaths a day. A lot of people were curious what the fallout of the trial would be, and while police officers both in Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota, and in large metropolitan cities across the area, and some smaller ones, were prepared for a more contentious reaction. A lot of cases that there was actually celebration, cheering. I've heard some testimonies from friends who live in some of those more densely populated areas talking about the reactions rippling through the crowd. I personally didn't find it something to be shouting about, but that's me personally. I just kind of took it as a moment of quiet reflection, thinking it was sad that we had to get to this point. I don't believe that the police officer meant to kill George Floyd when he kneeled on him, but that didn't stop it from happening. And despite protests from the crowd, there were lots of opportunities to interrupt that. It's a shame that change could have been achieved at a lower cost, without a man dying in police custody, without having his day in court. We didn't even have to put Chauvin before trial. He could have changed his ways at other points. We have a bit more coverage with the Rocket Miner. We've been following closest beforehand, but just some headlines that I would direct you all to would be Floyd verdict gives hope, if only fleeting, to Black America. For George Floyd, a complicated life and consequential death. Tears and relief sweep intersection where George Floyd died. And despite growing chorus, Department of Justice is limited in police probes. That's just a small selection of the stories today. We actually had more today in the past week. I'd encourage you to dig into it. We'll keep following the trial. It was noted that the police officer, his bail was revoked upon the conclusion of the jury's part of the trial. His sentencing will be in 2 months. The most serious charge carries up to 40 years in prison, though for sentencing guidelines being what they were for a person without a criminal record, that's just the case prior to this for Mr. Chauvin. About 12 and a half years is the recommended list, though the prosecution has asked for more severe sentencing than that, citing cruelty to Mr. Floyd, abuse of power, amongst other factors. The sentencing will be up to a judge, while the conclusion was verdicts were rendered by a jury trial. At the end of closing arguments on Monday, Mr. Chauvin waived his right to have the jury decide, putting the decision in the sentencing solely in the hand of the judge in the trial. In addition to the Associated Press stories that are at rocketminer.com, there's other ways that you can dig into this topic, of which you can spend a lifetime working on it. Western Wyoming Community College is hosting a special event tomorrow on Wednesday, focused on the story covered by the White Lies podcast, a true crime investigation that looked into the death of a civil rights leader, a reverend who actually had Wyoming ties, who was killed in 1965, and they've not found his murderer. Journalists Andrew Beck Grace and Chip Bentley are going to give a presentation and Q&A tomorrow at the Rock Springs campus in room 1302, or if you prefer to do it virtually, over Zoom. The event set to start at 6:30 p.m. April 21st. The people who have been working to bring that And this is an event that was delayed, that the hope was to have done this the previous spring, but COVID interrupts a lot of things. But the goal was to help connect what's people living in Wyoming today with the events in the civil rights period, such as back in 1965 in Selma, Alabama. There are more than a few parallels, and we're talking about the reverberations from the death of a Wyoming resident. Reverend Reeb, who the story follows, he grew up in Wyoming. He attended Wyoming's school in Casper, along with university, before moving to D.C. and then ultimately traveling down to the South to get involved with the civil rights movement, and which was led to his death. His story didn't end there, as he was added to a way too long list of martyrs. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at his funeral, giving a eulogy. And President Lyndon Johnson actually cited Reverend Reeb's death when pushing for civil rights legislation. There's more work to be done. We can always do more self-improvement, but even if some people are currently or comfort or don't have as much stress around police, that doesn't mean that other Americans, other neighbors, residents don't have concerns. The goal is to make stuff like this a non-event. Honestly, there were great worries amongst a certain part of the American population that, despite video evidence and a lot of witness testimony, that the police officer would be found not guilty. And there were those worried that that happened, there would be riots, unrest, damage, more deaths. Well, some were basking in a level of celebration, or at least relief. The fact that when such evidence is prevalent, that this being the conclusion was not foregone. The fact that there was tension. A political cartoon that I thought was relevant was it had just a big old giant knife labeled Chauvin trial, and it showed America kind of like a little person with a shirt that said America, as if he was walking the thin blade, the edge of the knife, because that was it was that tense, the stakes were that high, and the safe stretch is that limited, that fleeting under your feet. There will probably be challenges in this case. I anticipate there will be more cases like this. I hope not too many. I hope that as we go on, that these types of cases become increasingly rare, if not at all. Probably won't get to that point, but it's a good goal. To register for for more questions about the White Lies presentation at Western Wyoming Community College, you can contact A. Galley at westernwyoming.edu or call 307-382-1645. There's an article at rockandbiter.com in the print edition detailing a little bit more. And then just kind of going back to Sail Away. In addition to being performed by the author, Randy Newman, I listened to multiple covers this afternoon, such as Joe Cocker, Harry Nilsson, Ray Charles, Etta James. It's interesting to see so many different takes on it. In some cases, they're changing the words, the cadence, the music. One of the parts of the American dream is that you can, the goal is that you can take your own, you can achieve your own self. And the goal is that to have a fair, flat playing field, that the same rules apply to everyone, the same opportunities as much as possible are open to everyone, and you take that and you run with it, and you do what only you can do, showing off your talents, your skills. And the honest thing is that we don't have an honest playing field. There's lots of other factors in play, economical, family connections, good luck, dumb luck. But as much as we can, we should be thinking about what can be done to try to get back to that promise. I think back of the lyrics of Sail Away and what it means to be an American, how it can be truly great. And it is my hope that we're all able to get to the point where everybody can make the most of that American promise and make that dream a reality. And if you've achieved it yourself, I'm hoping that you're lending a hand to others, and you haven't done it yourself. I hope that you're persevering, that you keep your eyes open for those who can lend you a hand, and that you keep chasing it, because it is truly something that, if it can be achieved, is quite wonderful. This is Caleb Smith with the Rocket Miner newspaper, wishing you a good day and a safe tomorrow. Bye.